Hey there, fellow nerds. Welcome to another episode of The Present Illness. This is a podcast where two physicians try to make sense of a world that's a little febrile and definitely underdiagnosed. I'm Arga Gonzalez, a surgeon scientist, and your friendly neighborhood doom scroller in residence.
And I'm Alyssa Burgard, an anesthesiologist and bioethicist who tracks news and health law like their EKGs, full of spikes and surprises. The Present Illness is where we dig into public health, politics, culture, and ethics with a scalpel in one hand and a meme in the other.
Big thanks to everyone listening, and extra love to our subscribers and our followers, and a special warm welcome to anyone who just stumbled in from learning how much the Pentagon wasted in September.
And how much did the Pentagon waste in September?
93 billion with a B dollars in 1 month. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, because
And
remember
I'm
what
just
was happening? Do you remember what was happening in September? They were cutting SNAP.
that's exactly what I was just thinking of. I was like, wait, so we spent that much money for the Pentagon, but we were like, no, children should not have food.
But it's even better because you want to know like some of the things that they spent money on. $225 million for furniture, $5 million on Apple devices, $2 million on musical instruments. I mean, I love music, but
I'm sorry,
um,
what musical instruments does the Pentagon need? That's not their job.
I don't have the detail on this specific thing, but I know I read that one of the things was a grand piano for somebody's home.
Yeah. Well, those are expensive.
And it'll add up, you know? Yeah, it was actually, I found that. It was an almost $100,000 Steinway& Sons grand
I
piano for the Air Force Chief of
I
Staff's home.
I was literally wondering if it was a Steinway. And I'm sorry, you said it was for somebody's home?
Correct. The Air Force Chief of Staff's home. $7 million on lobster tail, $2 million on king crab, $15 million on ribeye steak.
Listen, let them eat cake. I mean, what sort of farcical government are we in right now?
$140,000 worth of donuts.
Well, that's not cake, but okay.
I mean, I'm just saying in 1 month, I think it's hard to fathom how much 1 billion is.
I can't imagine it.
And this is 93 billion in 1 month because the explanations have been given is that like if they don't spend the money, then you know how like a lot of budgets are. If you don't spend the money, then the next budget season they're like, oh well, you didn't need the money, so we're gonna lower your budget. And so this was like supposedly spending to make sure they zeroed out the budget so that they could continue to get astronomical amounts of funding
But like,
for.
wouldn't it? But like, you know how if like you have an extra ticket to a concert and you're like, wow, it's a real bummer I can't use that ticket. I couldn't find anybody to go with me. You know what? I'm going to give it away.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool? Like,
Yeah.
what if they were like instead? They were like, wow, we have a boatload of money. Like, we have so much money for war and whatnot. What if instead? Now, hear me out. We were like, wow, it seems like there's a lot of Americans that could really benefit from having access to healthcare and food. Maybe we should just, do a little transfer, little funds transfer. I mean, I feel like that would have been better. I mean, I'm just saying.
I listen, you don't have to convince me. I think that would have been great. And you know what else could I use that money is research funding. So yeah, there were other uses of that money that I think might have been more helpful. And just a reminder for everyone that this is the administration that was intent on eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse.
I mean, empty the swamp, bitches.
No, they brought the swamp in. They built a swamp. In fact, that's why they took out the east wing of the White House, so they can build a swamp right there and they can all feel at home.
Or a data center. Who knows? Oh my
Anyway,
gosh.
yeah.
Well, listen, people, we are so glad that you are here. We know that none of you would spend billions of dollars on the Pentagon when you could feed children. As a note to our new listeners, we often talk about topics that can be intense. They can be kind of a lot. So you may not want to listen to this with your little ones. But I thought before we get into the episode, I thought that I would share a listener shout out.
Please do.
I love reading these to you. I love it.
I love hearing them.
Okay. So first of all, 5 out of 5 stars, obviously. This is says Dr. Salas and Burgard are informative and funny and appropriately disgruntled slash enraged. If you're interested in the intersection of science, healthcare, and politics, check this one out.
They've got it down. They nailed it. Thank you
We
so much.
accept.
Who was do you know who the person was? What their
Um, it was somebody whose nickname is called Not Seeing It, or
Okay,
their
great.
handle. Yeah.
Well, thank you so
Thank you,
much
Not Seeing It.
because I think you saw it.
We did. We agree.
That does make me think. I just one thing before we get into our main topics for today. Something that I think we won't have time to discuss in much detail today is that there's yesterday I saw, I think it was yesterday. We're recording on Thursday, March 12th. Video of the deposition of one of the DOGE employees who was responsible for basically identifying which grants to terminate. And it was, as someone whose grant was terminated, it was so infuriating. Like, it would be funny if these folks had not caused so much damage, because the way it went, this is almost exactly, to our listeners, this is almost exactly how it went. It was like the questioner asks him, his name is Justin Fox. The questioner asks him, how do you know if something is DEI? He goes, well, it was in the EO. Okay, what does it say in the EO? And he goes, I don't know. I don't remember what's in the EO. And the questioner goes, okay, well, do you have an understanding of what DEI is? And he's, by the way, nodding his head vigorously this whole time. And he's like, yes. And then the questioner's like, so what is DEI? And he goes, it's in the EO. And the questioner's like, but let's just step back from the methodology that you all use. Like, do you yourself sitting right here today have an understanding of what DEI is? And he goes, yes. And so the questioner's like, what is it? And then the guy goes, it's what's in the EO. It was just like going around in circles. And again, I'm laughing because it's so absurd. And if there had not been huge consequences for so many people, including myself, it really would just be funny. But instead, it is extremely aggravating that people who don't even know what they're talking about were put in charge of determining what research was allowed to continue and not. And this was part of a briefing for a case that involves the National Endowment for the Humanities. So they went on to ask him about funding they had terminated for a documentary about women in the Holocaust, Jewish women in the Holocaust. And he says, well, that was DEI and it's, discriminatory. And the questioner's like, but what about it is discriminatory? Of course, he can't say, but he says, well, it's because it's about a specific group. And then he's like, what group? And he's like, females, since it's about females
I mean,
and
let's be honest.
Jewish
If you
people.
hear anybody refer to women as females,
Yeah,
you know that they are very down with discrimination. Down with it.
that's correct. They have gone
That's a
somewhere.
red flag.
Yeah, and they're down the red pill pathway. Anyway, this is coming from that last piece I just mentioned, because this is coming from the administration that supposedly is fighting anti-Semitism. That's like their big thing that they hide behind to carry out a lot of their harm that they've inflicted on higher education. And that this grant that was for creating a documentary about the Holocaust is one of the things they chose to terminate because it was so-called discriminatory DEI. And last thing I'll say is that as I was watching this guy flounder, really, Justin has no idea what he's saying. And he's trying to justify decisions that make no sense. He's using these labels like discriminatory. I was reminded of the words that they were searching for in some of these grants. There was an NSF word list that was leaked, and women and females were on those lists, all the various versions that we saw, but we never saw male or males or men on those lists. So you have to imagine, like, I was thinking about like the baseball documentary by Ken Burns, right? Like, is that discriminatory in Justin's mind? I'm sure it's not, because it's men. Anything about men is fine. But anything about women or anything about Jewish people, anything about, he even used the phrase marginalized voices, which I thought was interesting. I was like, oh, I didn't even know you knew that, but it was probably written in the grant. Isn't probably where he
I
got
mean,
it from.
well, and it was funny because the only clip of this that I've seen so far was actually your clip
Mm.
that I just happened to see right before we logged on to record this episode. And I mean, what was wild to me was that they kept asking me, I'm like, so what is DEI? And like, he couldn't even come up with 3 words that started with D, E, and I. Like, and he didn't try. I don't know that he could have remembered. He didn't even, I mean, he literally couldn't just be like things that are associated with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, and the EO didn't use those words. It just said DEI
That's
because
right.
it's like, it's just, anyway,
That's
these
right.
people
I
are
think
too stupid to be in charge, yet here we are.
exactly right. It's just like another symptom of the elevation of incompetence under the guise of meritocracy, which is what
And
this
carelessness.
yeah, which
Yeah.
is what this administration is really excelling at, to be honest. Incompetence and 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 lack of insight, lack of planning. It's just like whatever, fly by the seat of our pants. Anyway, so that's apparently how they were making these decisions, people who had no idea what they were talking about. I will say in Justin's defense that I think I may have seen a clip somewhere where he did use the words diversity, equity, and inclusion, but when they were asking him, like, "What does that mean?" He just couldn't come up with anything other than, "It's what's in the EO." And the
What
EO,
a
to your
time to
point,
be
was
alive.
and the EO, as you said, was very vague, so I don't even know what he means when he says they would consult the EO for what? Like, the EO was a bunch of garbage. Anyway, alright, shall we move on to, our main topics for today?
Absolutely. Well, let me tell you, it's, when you and I started this, we could not have anticipated how much activity there would be in Iran.
Yeah.
Like you and I weren't like, hey, let's do a podcast about Iran. Let's talk about Iran all the time. Like that was not the pitch.
No.
Um, but there's news today. And like you said, we're recording on March 12th. Late on March 11th, which is Wednesday of this week that our episode's coming out, there was a massive cyber attack on Stryker, which is it's like a mega healthcare corporation. They make tons of, as you know, medical devices, artificial joints. They operate a bunch of health technology, both devices and software. And when people are like, why do you guys talk about Iran so much? Why, how does Iran connect to health? Well, today's the day for that to be as absolutely obvious as possible to many Americans. Is this wiper attack that took place was in retaliation for bombing, potentially of the school in, was it Manab? Am I saying
Mhm,
that right?
mhm.
And the hacker group, it's both a pro-Palestinian and a pro-Iranian group. It sounds like it's funded in many ways through the Iranian government. The Handala hack team is apparently linked with the Ministry of Intelligence and Security. So for folks who start reading about this online, you might see MOIS, and that's what that's in reference to. And so Handala wiped apparently more than 200,000 of Stryker's devices. Apparently, a bunch of Stryker employees, and they have like, I don't know, 56,000 people in many, many countries. And a bunch of people use their phones, as I do. I use my phone as an alarm clock. And a lot of people did not wake up. Their alarm didn't go off. And that was because their phone had been wiped in the night by
Wow.
Handala. Um, and when people showed up to work, there was literally a sign posted. Portage, Michigan is where the main Stryker headquarters is. And they had signs on the doors saying, like, businesses closed today. Please do not open your computers. Do not use your phones. There's this massive, massive data problem. So apparently, for the people who had shown up to work on time, who have maybe regular alarm clocks, when they went to open their computers, they were greeted with this symbol of the Handala hacker group. And I didn't realize this. The logo that apparently appeared, I just was doing a little bit of searching. It's a 1969 cartoon from somebody named Naji Al Ali. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And it's apparently an iconic figure that represents a 10-year-old Palestinian refugee who refuses to show his face until he returns to his homeland. And so the picture is sort of a little child who's facing away, and his backside looks quite dirty. And then it says like Handala around it.
Huh.
So I'll put a link in the show notes to a little bit more about that also. But I did not expect that this morning I would be learning so much about hacktivist groups that are affiliated with Iran and trying to support Iran. And it's very interesting because, of course, this is a way to attack Americans that doesn't require any bombs at all. It's
Mhm.
keystrokes. You know,
Mhm.
hacker groups are, and for folks who don't realize also, like, hospitals and healthcare systems are constantly being under cyber attack. And so any sort of weakness in these cyber systems can be found by a hacker group that's very motivated and then exploited. And so uh, there is not a hospital in America, as far as I know, that doesn't have at least some product or
Mhm.
device that is affiliated with Stryker. That is a common word to hear around the operating room. I hear the word Stryker all day long in
Yeah,
our
I mean,
ORs.
we use Stryker devices, for laparoscopy frequently, either
Hmm.
their insufflators or their cameras or other devices. So they are, yeah, they're quite prevalent in operating rooms. So that I'm curious. I had kind of seen the headlines about this, but hadn't read about it in depth. And I was curious about. Well, here's what I had heard. I had heard that apparently they got in through some admin account that had like
Yep,
control over, well, or not, maybe not control, but has access to all the other devices that are like part of the company's devices. And then because they were
yep.
able to get into that one account, they could wipe out all these other devices. What I hadn't heard, and I don't know if you know, is how, like, any of these devices that are being used in hospitals, were they affected by this hack? Like, were they not able to were there like cases that had to be canceled? Like, do you know what the extent of the impact was?
I don't think that we know the full extent yet. And part of it, I think, is that, this has just started. We're not even
Mhm.
24 hours into this attack. I know that our hospital system sent out multiple emails this morning saying, like, we are aware of this issue. We're figuring out what's happening. Stryker does run something called the LifeNet system, which is a data and asset management system that's supposed to help patient devices communicate
Mm,
with healthcare systems. They say that particular tool was not impacted,
mm,
um, which is reassuring because that's obviously a big connection where for patients, for example, who have monitoring devices that are meant
mhm.
to provide alerts to their healthcare providers,
I see.
they're
Mhm,
saying that that hasn't been impacted. Again, I think we're going to find out more as this unfolds. Um, but yeah, apparently the hacker group was able to find at least some access to administrator level data, and whether that was through one particular account or if there were others, it's
mhm.
not entirely clear. Um, it is disconcerting to me that Stryker was not perhaps more prepared for this.
Mm,
And I think that this incident is going to be a massive wake up call to every single health technology company and banks and like other
yes.
businesses that, like, you know, a lot of our data is very insecure. We
Mhm.
live, we want to believe that it's secure, but apparently Handala has, basically just wiped terabytes of data,
Yep.
just gone. And, that's a real, it's interesting because it's different from a malware attack where you would insert code that would sort of pollute your system, or a ransomware attack where you would hold a system hostage
Mhm,
to
mhm.
achieve some goal.
Right, right.
This was just straight up destruction. They were like wiping it out.
Yeah.
Um,
That's scary. It's
s-
really scary how
yeah,
easily
and
that can
so
be done.
what I'm not clear about as well is for striker devices that are in hospitals. I'm very curious to find out what may have come of that, or
Mhm.
because certainly if you think about the laparoscopy equipment, some of it's equipment that works on its own. It's not
Yeah.
connected into any sort of like striker system necessarily. But I imagine that some of their more complex tools that are used for, like, you know, stereotactic procedures or
Mhm,
other things
mhm.
that actually do require striker software. I don't know if those things have been
Yeah.
impacted in this attack. It's interesting too because I will also be curious if all of this data has been lost. Were there backups? Like, what how prepared
Mhm.
was Stryker in terms of how much of this is just straight up lost? How much of that was data that was being maintained that they're just going to have to live without. I don't know.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
that'll be I mean, I was interested when I heard the story, and, um, I'll be curious to see what more we learn and whether there will be more, because I don't know if you saw, but, like, Gavin Newsom made some comments yesterday about the risk of Iran launching something at California and, like a missile, like, at
hmm.
California, and what steps they're taking to, like, protect, um us, I guess, since we're both based in California. But I don't think that's super, like, I mean, they're very far away from us. I think that would be less likely to happen. And I think we're more likely to see more things like this. Like you might start to see more sectors affected by these types of cyber attacks as a way of overcoming the geographical challenge for folks who are that far away. So, like, we don't have a bomb we can send over there, but we can do a lot of damage otherwise, as long as
Well,
this war continues.
absolutely. And, for folks may or may not recall, like back in 2024, there was a ransomware attack on the Change healthcare system, which is like multiple hospitals that are all connected in a system. And, that was a different kind of attack. It was a ransomware attack, not a data wiping attack. But 100 million Americans' health data, their private health data, was exposed. It disrupted care across the United States to all sorts of facilities that are part of this Change Healthcare network of
Mhm.
service providers. And it ended up costing $2.4 billion
Wow.
in terms of the cost to respond to it. Now, that's nothing on the Pentagon cost. I mean, okay, that's like little, but $2.4 billion is still a lot. Billion with a B.
Sounds like a lot to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the other thing that I think about this all the time because I think about cyber attacks and we I know that there are many attacks that happen on organizations. And also if you think about even just for people like calling in like a bomb threat, for example, right? Like if somebody fakes a bomb threat, you can still shut down an entire hospital.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
right.
this is also a way where I think we're going to see increasingly complex ways that hacktivists are able to disrupt not just healthcare, but other sectors, as you mentioned. Anytime that like the Epic system goes down, even for a few hours, it is a wild disruption. I think that at this point, patients are very, patients say all the time, like, oh, it's in the computer. It's in the record. Can't you look it up? And I will tell you the first time, and like you and I are both of the elder millennial age that like, we've had exposure to paper charts and like kind of know what I used to chart all of my anesthesia charting was on paper on
Mhm,
triplicate. I had like
mhm,
triplicate
mhm, mhm,
papers that I wrote all my anesthetic records and when Epic goes down, you go from having like this comprehensive, incredible story you can put together of like where your patient's been and what's their
mhm.
journey been and when did they get diagnosed with something and oh, here's all the medications they tried and oh, here's their allergy list. And when that system goes down, what you have is nothing. You have to go back to basics and do an entire from scratch history and
Yeah.
physical about like their entire life to be like, so I want you to be safe today and I literally know nothing about you. So we're going to have to figure that out together. And it's a massive disruption of care.
Yeah.
And as much as I don't love the electronic healthcare record, I think there's a lot of room for it to be improved.
Mhm.
It is absolutely something that we rely on. And so
Yeah.
I certainly hope that Epic is doing a lot of work right now to shore up their cybersecurity
Oh, I do too. I
because
mean, that would be
can you
really
imagine?
catastrophic if they got hacked. So many
Yeah.
hospitals rely, and clinics, not just hospitals, rely on Epic. Um, well, thank you for bringing us that story. I will be interested to see how this develops. Um,
Well, and I'll
related.
tell you, I
Mhm.
was very proud to be the one who got to bring the Iranian story today.
I mean, at this point, I feel like you're also Iranian. It's like, Iranian by
I'm like,
proxy. So
I'm Iranian adjacent. I'm learning Tarof.
you sure are. Well, I think so. This is a good spot to segue, I think, to the new supreme leader in Iran,
Oh,
um,
okay.
because
Tell me more.
yeah. So I want to tell you more, but I want to start with what connects most closely to what you said, which is that and the story about the hacking. He made a statement, supposedly. I should back up and say that we're not totally sure that he's alive and well. Um, but the statement that came out was read by somebody on TV with like a photo of him on the screen. Um,
So this is something that was attributed to him, but we don't
correct.
have any proof of life.
Correct. There are people, I have heard Iranians saying that he's in an ICU somewhere on a ventilator. There are definitely suspicions that he was injured. Actually, I think even the Iranian government admitted that he had been injured. If folks remember the day that his father, Khamenei, the previous supreme leader, was killed, Mojtaba's mother, his dad's wife, was also killed. Mojtaba's wife was also killed, and then one of Mojtaba's sons was also killed in that attack. And so it's not surprising that he might have been injured because he was presumably in the same place as his loved ones. So how severe the injuries are, no one really knows. But he's not been on TV. We've not seen him, even as they've like celebrated his ascent to the role of supreme leader following his father in his father's footsteps. So today was the first kind of communication that supposedly came from him. But like you said, it's attributed to him. Unclear whether, he actually is alive, unclear whether if he is alive, has the capacity to be making a statement or writing a statement like this. And it's quite a long statement, and we're not going to read it. But the part I wanted to highlight um, is where he talks about kind of how he's thinking about this current war. And he says, I assure everyone, this was translated by an Iranian news agency. I assure everyone that we will not forego taking vengeance for the blood of your martyrs. He's talking to the Iranian people. The vengeance we intend is not solely related to the martyrdom of the great leader of the revolution. Rather, every member of the nation martyred by the enemy is a separate subject for the vengeance file. Of course, a limited amount of this vengeance has materialized so far, but until its full extent is achieved, this file will remain on top of other matters, and we will have particular sensitivity regarding the blood of our children. Therefore, the crime deliberately committed by the enemy at the Shajar Tayyibah school in Minab and similar incidents holds a special significance in this regard. And he goes on later in the statement. I won't read this part to you, but he goes on to talk to the leaders of the other kind of Gulf countries in that region, and the countries where Iran has been bombing U.S. military bases, saying that he basically requests that these countries close those bases as a rejection of the U.S.'s, he says, claim of establishing security and peace. So that, and he tries to make clear that these attacks on these military bases are intended to only be attacks on the United States. They're not trying, he says, or whoever wrote this says, to fracture relations with these countries that they value and see as friends. Supposedly, that's kind of what the gist of that part is. He also says that the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed, and as long as this goes on, apparently. And
And can you just, for people who don't understand, why does the Strait of Hormuz matter? Like, why is that such a
yeah,
power point?
so 20% of the world's oil comes through the Strait of Hormuz, and that strait is really controlled by Iran. They when people have asked me, like, is it like, what do you mean by closed? So it's not a physical barrier. It's that they have threatened that anybody trying to go through there will get attacked. And they have attacked multiple oil tankers and other ships that have gone through there. What is a very interesting kind of power move by the Iranian government is that their own oil is still being able to move through the strait. And so they're still able to ship their oil out while preventing anyone else from doing so, which is another way to hurt the US and the rest of the world while still profiting off the land themselves. That's what they're very, very good at. The Islamic Republic of Iran is taking advantage of and exploiting the land that really should belong to the country. But anyway, so it's there's been issues with insurers not wanting ships to move through there, saying they won't cover any damage that is incurred because it's not safe to go through there. That's part of why there's lower traffic, but also just people making rational decisions that it's not worth the risk of having your ship bombed, because they've been very clear that that's what they're going to do to ships that are moving through there. And so that's why we've seen the price of oil rising. Last I heard was $180 a barrel. Apparently, no, I'm sorry, $120 a barrel. And apparently it had gotten to over 140 some odd was the last time it was really high, and that was in 2008. Um,
I should have bought gas last week. I was
I
wait
know.
too long.
I was so lucky. I filled up on Thursday right before the Saturday strikes, and I don't drive that much, so I'm okay for the moment. But obviously, we'll all need gas, because we have not chosen to adopt really full scale alternate energy sources because in large part because of this current president who stopped all green energy efforts basically. Anyway, so we could have been in a position where we were less dependent on oil, but we have made choices, well, not you and I, but people in charge have made choices that continue to force us to be reliant on oil. And some people have said in my comments like, oh well, they can just get the oil from Venezuela, but the oil companies have been very clear that they can't actually use that oil. It needs a lot of processing because of the state that it's in just naturally there in Venezuela. And so it's really not usable. So that's not likely to be a short term outcome here. What's most likely is that just oil prices are going to continue to go up, and Iran is going to use that as leverage. I mean, that's basically what this statement says. This is leverage that we have, and we'll continue to use it. Um, One of the things that I think is concerning to a lot of people around the world is that this is totally foreseeable. Like, I mean, it's not surprising that they would do this. And I mean, this is what you would ask with a rational administration. Like, how did you not have a plan for this? But obviously, we know that this administration has no plans for anything. In fact, Donald Trump earlier this week said, we've won the war, even though it's continuing. And the people, okay, this is funny. I'll just say this for a minute. He did say that somebody asked him, like, percentage wise, like, how far are we in this war as your assessment? And he was like, oh, the war is nearly complete. I know it's kind of a weird question to ask. But so he said the war is nearly complete, and the person said, "Well, but Pete Hegseth said today that it's just starting," and he said, "Well, it's both. For us, it's nearly complete, but for them, it's still going." I don't know. I mean, you have to see it to
I
believe
mean, and
it.
meanwhile, like the war in Ukraine just hit 4 years. Like,
He was
I
supposed
mean,
to stop that. He was supposed to stop that. What did he say? His first week in office, he was going to end that war.
well, we stopped the participating in Afghanistan, and look how well that's gone.
Yes, yes, we meaning he, released a bunch of Taliban before we left, from prison, before we withdrew. So that's why women in Iran, girls in Iran, can no longer go to school or get education or become doctors or dentists, and so other women can't, get healthcare. That's really going swimmingly. Um, okay, so back to this guy Mojtaba. I do wanna say because, not that this person's listening to us, but I saw a newscaster calling him Mojtaba, like, there's a J in the middle of this guy's name. We don't have
Uh-huh.
the J as an H sound in Farsi. It's
Oh,
Mojtaba.
that's
It's not
very Spanish.
Mojtaba.
That's a
Yeah,
very
exactly.
that's
I
for
Spanish is
different
lovely, but
language.
yeah, different language. Yeah, anyway,
So
so
say it again. How do you say it?
Mojtaba.
Okay.
Mojtaba. So anyway, this guy, so he's the second son of Ali Khamenei being the second supreme leader, the one who was just killed by the United States. The first supreme leader of Iran from the 1979 revolution was Khomeini. Um, and he's been dead since 1989. Thank goodness. Anyway, so Mojtaba was born in Mashhad, which is a very religious city. It's also where his father, the previous supreme leader, was born. They moved to Tehran, somewhere along his youth. He served in the Iran-Iraq War, and interestingly, he served, as I read, um, he served under the IRGC, so not under the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the official part of the military, but under the IRGC, which is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So I just want to, yeah, pause for that because I see the confusion there. So the IRGC is, we've talked before that it's not just a military force or a security force, but it's also like involved in the economy, extremely like involved. They say maybe responsible for roughly half of the Iranian economy, and also deeply embedded in the politics of the country. It's a very powerful group, but it's not a military, like it's not the traditional forces that we have in other countries. They are in addition to those forces. And part of the reason is that, as the name suggests, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, their purpose is to protect the Islamic Revolution that happened in Iran. And so it's not to defend the country, it's to protect the revolution and maintain this system of governance. And that's important because back when the Shah was overthrown in 1979, part of the way that that happened is that the military turned against him, defected,
Hmm.
joined with the people. And so this Islamic Revolution Guard Corps, part of its function is to prevent that from happening. Because even if, say, the Army, the Navy, so on, at this moment in time just chose to defect, the IRGC is still there defending this system of governance, and
I see. I
they're
didn't
gonna
really
do it.
understand that before.
It is confusing. Yeah, I agree. So anyway, so he had served, as I read, under the IRGC, not under one of the branches of the military. And then he later went on to lead the Basij. So Basij is another paramilitary force that is volunteers. And they're usually plainclothes. So when you see them on the streets, you'll see people looking like you and me, well, except for their men. I don't think I'm not even sure if there's any women that are allowed in the Basij. But anyway, they're wearing normal clothes but carrying a gun. And that's how you know that they're besieged, because regular people
Oh,
in Iran don't have a gun. Yeah, they're just walking
just
around
open carry.
with weapons. Yeah. So Mojtaba, was for some period of time at the head of the Basij, which is a rather large force. We don't actually know how many people. I've seen estimates from 1 million to 10 million. It's unclear how many people are part of the Basij. And so he was in charge of that group during the Green Movement. So back in 2009, there had been an election in Iran where the people had been hoping for reform, and there had been a reform candidate for president. And I'm not going deep into that history right now, but I'll just say that there's a lot of controversy around whether the announced results of that election reflected the votes of the people. And the person who won was another hardliner, who moved on to continue the Islamic Republic and not make any changes in support of the people. And there was a massive uprising at that time. So I've often said, when we've talked about uprisings, I've mentioned 2009. So that was
Hmm.
why it had to do with this election. And so around that time, Mujtaba was in charge of the Basij and led a crackdown on the protesters in 2009. So he's known. We don't know a lot about him, at least what I've read in English media. My Farsi reading is very slow, just to be fair. So I don't do a lot of my reading of in Farsi. So what I've seen in English written media is that he is known for being involved in these repressions of people multiple times over. There are some thoughts that he is, or many thoughts that he is more hardline than his father. I did read somewhere,
Oh,
I forget which outlet today, but US media, that maybe he wasn't. I don't trust that as much as what I'm hearing from Iranians, which is that everyone is concerned that he's more hardline than his father. And then
yeah.
these,
I mean, and like, but also, and like, been really bad with his dad. It was not great.
right, exactly. So that's the other thing, is that people are saying, well, whatever he might have been, I mean, he clearly lost multiple members of his family due to the US, and so he's not likely to back down from this war. And certainly that's what we saw in this statement. There was no sense of, and we haven't seen that from anybody, like the foreign minister or anyone else who's spoken out. We haven't seen signs that they're like willing to negotiate. I mean, the US has asked multiple times since this war started for a conversation, and the leaders in Iran have said, no way, why would we talk to you? I mean, the foreign minister went on the news and said, in the US, US news, and said, why would we negotiate? Like, the last two times we've negotiated, we've come for multiple rounds of negotiations. We've thought we were making progress, and then we get bombed in the middle of it. So why would we do that? And you know that I hate these guys, but like, I mean, that's a reasonable point to make. Like, why would they negotiate if it's not done in good faith, which is what their
Hmm.
assessment is of
Hmm.
the US in these negotiations. So basically, yeah, we've got whatever Mojtaba's like predilection might have been, or whatever his positions might have been before this. There is definitely concern that he's going to be even more anti the US now because of what's happened to his family. Um, and the statement that was put out that was attributed to him certainly is in line with that. We're going to get vengeance for every single life that was lost in our country. It's worth noting that while this is all happening, the government of Iran is also threatening its own people. And in many ways, and they're also threatening Iranians in the diaspora, saying that our assets will be seized there if we are saying anything against the regime. I mean, many of us have known that they're monitoring us for years now when we post about the Islamic Republic of Iran. And so they've threatened us. They've threatened, I think we talked before about a threat to people's children. Like if your children are, saying the words of the enemy or supporting the enemy, then we will have to kill them. And we don't want to do it, but we're going to have to do it. And now they have even more explicit threats saying that anyone who goes out in the streets disagreeing with the Islamic Republic of Iran will be treated as an enemy and will be shot and killed. We're ready to shoot and kill everybody. I mean, that was on state television this week. So it's worth pausing there for a minute because Laura Ingraham was, I mean, not that like we should pay too much attention to what someone like her says, but she was like, well, why aren't Iranians uprising? And Trump himself had said, if folks recall, in the early days of the war, well, we did our part. Now it's in the hands of the Iranian people. And when you're asked, like, why aren't they uprising? I mean, it just shows such an ignorance of the situation. But they're not out in the streets because, well, one, we're raining bombs down on them. And two, because their own government is telling them that if you come out in the streets, we will kill you point blank. And they've set up checkpoints all over cities across the country at night. I may have seen these videos. They have military vehicles that are just running down the streets um, an intimidation factor. And they are continuing to do what we've seen them do before, which is to shoot into the windows of people's homes if they're chanting even from inside their homes. So there's a clear, like, military state there from the government imposed on its own people to make sure that they don't come out in the streets. So I would love for Laura to go to Iran and protest in the streets and see how that goes. Anyway,
Which
with
Laura?
Laura Ingraham,
Oh, yeah, she said something. Well, anyway.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
got it.
so if you're going to sit there and say, why aren't they doing that? When you when I just can't imagine that she would under those circumstances. And it's not, I don't think it's a reasonable ask, and to judge people for like not doing that. I think we talked about this last time that the only survey data really that we have suggests that 70 to 80% of Iranians oppose this regime. So it's not like they're not out in the streets because they want to keep this
Well,
regime.
but this is also something where I think many Americans do not understand or appreciate that we live in relative safety. Like,
Hmm.
you know, we've been able to say whatever we want about our government. It's supposed to be a core tenet of who we are. Um, Obviously, the last year or so has started to bring that into question.
Hmm.
But I think it's a real example of how folks who are very US centric and don't really know much about what it's like to live in another country so easily dismiss or judge whatever people in other places are
Yeah,
doing. And it's like, you have no idea what their lives are like.
that's right.
Oh, I wanted to ask you, do you have an update on the soccer players? I've been really worried about the Iranian women's soccer team.
Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up. So the Iranian women's soccer team, in the midst of all of this that's been going on in Iran, they happened to be in Australia for a tournament, the Asian Cup. And their first match for the Asian Cup, the entire team chose not to sing the national anthem. So the music was playing and they did not sing. After that, they received threats via television in Iran, calling them traitors, and saying that they deserved severe punishment because they were traitors during war and this is treason. And so there were concerns that they might even be at risk of execution. Um, in Australia, there were calls for the Australian government to protect them. The Australian government offered all of them humanitarian visas, which was great. And seven members of the team, including at least one staff member, accepted those humanitarian visas, which I think is a really remarkable thing to do because at first it was five players who had accepted the visa. And we knew at that time that the members of three of those five were already being harassed by the police in Iran. And that's what they do. I mean, they
The
go after
family
people.
members?
Mhm, they go after people's
Mhm,
families to
mhm.
manipulate their behavior. And so if you're a player, if you're one of these women and you're in Australia, you're thinking, I don't want to go back. I mean, you may be thinking, I'm concerned about going back because they may put me in prison, they may rape me, they may kill me. But if I don't go back, they will likely torture my family. And so that's a terrible, terrible position to be in. Um, and so what ended up happening was 7 people accepted the humanitarian visas, but then one of them changed their mind, which caused a problem because they had gone to the Iranian embassy. And so they then knew the location of the other 6. And then they had to be
Oh,
moved to another location. Anyway, so 6 in the end accepted those humanitarian visas. The rest of the team, aside I don't know what happened with the timeline of this one person who changed their mind, but the rest of the team, I had seen video that they had landed in Malaysia. So they had taken off from Sydney a couple of days ago, and they landed and I didn't know. I wasn't able to see or find out where they were going to because they can't fly into Iran, uh, damage to the airport, but also the airspace is closed. So they landed in Malaysia, and we saw the same thing there that we had seen in Australia, which is people following them saying, please stay here, don't go back because they're also very concerned for these women's safety. I'm not sure. That's the last thing that I saw. When I looked today, I didn't see any further news beyond that. I'm not sure if the plan is to keep them there for a while or if they're going to be going. One of the Australian reporters had said her understanding was they were going to go to a country closer to Iran and then make a land crossing, which is
oh,
also possible. So I'm not totally sure. That's as much information as I've seen. Up to now. So I
mm,
remain as I think we all do, very concerned for the women who are going back and then the families of the women who did not go back.
yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for that um, update. And I really feel like that's the perfect downer topic for us to just transition into. Take 2 and call me in the morning.
Yeah. Let's do it. Just whiplash right along.
Ugh. So now that that's behind us, Argavon, what do you prescribe to our listeners?
Okay, I have
What
2 main
social media
things.
gems?
Yes, I have 2 main things, that I think might put a smile on people's faces. One is, there's Instagram has finally learned that I like cute animals. So it's
Mm.
serving me more animals doing cute things. And so I saw a video of I guess it's called a quokka, which is a small brown marsupial. I learned right before this. And it's just chewing a leaf. And it's so very happy chewing a leaf. And it just made me think, what a life that would be where like your biggest concern would be whether you can get a nice leaf. I would like that life. It just sounds
And
so
they
lovely.
always look like they're smiling, don't they?
Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. It's a very sweet video. I'll put a link in the show notes. And then there's another one, I don't know what this creature is. It's some kind of rodent as far as I can tell, but the caption doesn't say what it is exactly. Anyway, there's a creator who's I guess hosting this creature, whatever it is, and there's multiple videos of this rodent doing different things. So I saw one that was super cute. That was this animal chewing a pod of peas. And so like the pod is open and he's like first or they're I don't know their gender, chewing the outside of the pod and then they get to like one of the peas and anyway, it's really cute. And they're like reclined, the animal's reclined in somebody's hand like this and then just anyway,
Stop it.
yeah, it's
Stop
really
it.
cute. Now, okay, the second thing I had was um Timothy Chalamet made some
Ugh.
absurd comments about ballet and opera, and that's not the thing that's bringing me joy, but the responses. Uh
Well, and
yes.
isn't he like pitching or he's like marketing his show about ping pong or some nonsense?
Yes, the movie that he was nominated for an Oscar for is about a guy who plays ping pong and he's
The
there.
ballet, whatever.
Yeah, he's there criticizing, ballet and opera. What he said, I didn't prepare to show you that video, but I can tell you what he said, and also for our listeners in case they didn't see exactly what it was. It was something sorry, give me 1 second. It was something like, nobody cares about oh, yeah, here. I don't wanna work with ballet or opera where it's like, "Hey, let's keep this alive even if no one else cares." but all respect to the ballet and opera folks. Ha ha ha. Um, it's gross. Anyway, so in response, first of all, the very best thing is that ballets and operas around the world, like around the everybody took this very seriously. We're like, here's what our our theater looks like. See all these people coming to see us, and then there's like videos of them,
Can
dancing
you
and
imagine if
singing
a movie theater could get that many people to a movie?
of that size. I mean, it just doesn't happen anymore. I mean, that's the thing is like for him to say that while movie theaters are closing too, like it's anyway. So much beautiful opera and ballet being put out there by the best opera and ballet houses in the world. So that's just like everywhere, all over my timeline. And then there are a lot of responses from individuals I really like. But this is from the Seattle Opera House. This I think might be my favorite. But they said they created a promo code right after this happened, and it's promo code Timothy. And you can save 14% off seats for Carmen. And the 14%, I have to tell you, it's very specific because after Timothy had made those comments, he goes, "Oh, I guess I'm going to lose like 14 cents in royalties now." Ha ha ha. Um, so yeah, 14. So Seattle Opera House, 14% off. Promo code Timothy is just brilliant. Well done. I also appreciated this person said the viral amount of hate he's taking, he already lost the popular affection. This is translated, I should say, from Portuguese. Finally, we healed from the Chalamet pandemic. Somebody else said you can tell he thinks he's a generational talent. Opera singer Isabel Leonard said, "Honestly, I'm shocked that someone so seemingly successful can be so ineloquent and narrow-minded in his views about art while considering himself as an artist, as I would only imagine one would as an actor. Only a weak person slash artist feels the need to diminish, in fact, the very arts that would inspire those who are interested in slowing down to do exactly that." Um, it's here's another one that's relevant. I'll stop soon. It's so funny how he built his initial fan base on people who thought he was this deep artsy guy with films like Call Me by Your Name and Lady Bird when he's really just this. And then it's a bunch of crying emojis. Um, anyway, there's a lot of that out there. So if people want to see anybody who's been harboring maybe not the best feelings about Timothy Chalamet, this is a good moment for you. I personally look, I'm not like deeply invested in celebrity stuff, but what I didn't like was I had seen a video of him a few months back where he was talking about how he deserved an Oscar because he had worked so
Please.
hard.
I'm sorry. What? Shut up.
And I just feel
Nobody
like nobody
deserves anything.
exactly. I mean, yeah, it's just kind of gauche to be like, I deserved it and I didn't get it. And now, like, I definitely deserve this one. And this has all been part of his like Oscar campaign. So anyway, I just think it's gross. Like, I'm sure he has worked hard, but so do a lot of people. And there are so many talented people out there, especially when we're talking about actors and
There
to
are
be so full of himself. It's just off putting.
two of my cousins were professional ballet dancers. I mean,
Well, his mom and his sister are both ballet dancers.
what?
Yeah. He grew up
No.
yes, he grew up in New York across the street from, Lincoln Center for Performing Arts.
Oh, that makes it so
Exactly.
much worse. I didn't know that. That makes it even worse. I
Absolutely.
did love the Met Opera did a big response to him, and that was beautiful.
Yes.
And also, I had no idea how much ticket sales the Met Opera generates. I mean,
Mm.
and you talked about them pointing out, like, wow, we fill this whole opera house.
I was in Italy a couple years ago. I went to see a ballet at La Scala. I'm lucky and fortunate to be able to do that. I think one of the things people said in response to him was like, recognizing that these arts are somewhat inaccessible, that would have been an
Sure,
appropriate thing to say, right? Like, I
absolutely,
wish more people could see ballet and could
absolutely.
see opera because they are very expensive. They're really not accessible to a lot of people. Like, if he had said that, I think people would have been like, absolutely. Like, what a shame that we can't figure out a way to make this more affordable. But that's just not what he said. And people tried to twist it into that, people who were defending it. But, like, literally, that's not what he said.
I love the athleticism of ballet. Like
Yeah.
it's stunning, it's beautiful, and the things that ballet dancers are able to do with their bodies, I will never be able to do any of those things. That's wild. And There's a male ballet dancer who made a video in response to Chalamet's comments, and he is on a Bosu ball, so one of those like half balls that's inflated, and he's got the flat side on the ground, and he literally gets up on his pointed toe in this incredible position and just holds it.
Yeah, I think he was in an arabesque.
Yeah, and it's just stunning.
Well, and you can see his, like, foot and ankle are, like, struggling so hard. Yeah, 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 I
Yeah,
happened to see that video too. But, yeah, you can see how hard his foot and ankle have to work to keep him upright in that position on that boat ball.
totally amazing.
I will just say to that point that multiple people were like, as if Timothy could do ballet or opera, because that's also implicit in his statement that he
Sure.
could do those things, but chooses not to because no one cares about them or whatever. And the amount of years of training it takes to do like that video that you're just
Oh
describing,
my gosh.
I mean, it's incredible. Could he theoretically maybe have achieved that? I don't know, but he certainly didn't. Anyway, please tell us what you recommend for folks for your take two.
So, I know you love animals, so you're
Mhm.
gonna love this video. So there is a marine mammal rescue society that wanted to honor a veterinarian, a marine veterinarian who's been with the organization for 20 years. And the entire frame of this video, they have 20 years of like photos of him and little videos of him and doing work with these marine animals. But what they do is they frame it as though he is a rescued animal, that they rescued him 20 years ago, and like they kept trying to reintroduce him to the wild, and they'll show him like out on a boat, or they'll show him like at the shoreline, and they'll be like, but he just kept coming back, and eventually we just had to accept that he was never going to be able to be released. He was really too habituated to human contact. Anyway, it's very sweet. And just such a adorable and heartfelt way to honor somebody who clearly means so much to this organization, who
Mm.
has done so much. They talked a lot about his teaching and about the ways that like he continues to contribute to the humans that he works with by teaching them things. It's just really sweet.
Mm.
And then the other thing is, Wes Anderson movies have such a specific look to them. And
Yeah.
so every now and then you'll get somebody who says, they'll put a thing that says, well, don't turn it into a Wes Anderson film. And then somebody does.
Mhm.
And so one that I saw recently that I thought was very funny was, it's a group of people who do scuba diving in Antarctica for some
Mm.
scientific work, and but they made it Wes Anderson. And so there's just a lot of like clips of, very specific equipment, and like it's got the soundtrack that sounds like a Wes Anderson movie, and it was cute. So I'll share it with you, and you get a cool view under the ice of these folks
Wow.
diving, which was really impressive.
Nice. Yeah, well, I'll look forward to that. And I think that's it for this week's episode. If you didn't like what you heard, this has been The Emergency Meeting, which is the Tate Brothers podcast, if you didn't know. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe and follow The Present Illness. Leave us a review and a rating if you can, and let folks know how much you like the show.
And we know you love it because you've stayed this long. Please follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. We're at The Present Illness, and you can stay on top of all of our TPI-related news.
We will be back next week with more headlines, hot takes, and doom scrolling, hopefully wrapped in some laughs.
So until then, agitate, hydrate, and take a nap. See you next time on The Present Illness. Production by Arga Gonzalez and Alyssa Burgart. Editing by Alyssa Burgart. Social media by Arga Gonzalez. Original music by Joseph Uphoff. Don't take medical advice from random people on a podcast. This show's for informational purposes, and it's meant to be fun. It's certainly not medical advice. So please take your medical questions to a qualified professional.